The Crypto Markets Update is brought to you by KuCoin, the best place to find the next crypto gem.
Terrible day in the markets right now. Everything seems to be down. But joining us now to discuss is Stephen McClurg. He is Chief Investment Officer and co-founder of Valkyrie. Welcome, Stephen. And I do want to get to, you had a couple of announcements, but before we do, of course, we have to talk about just what's going on over the weekend and just how awful it's been. And what's your take on it? And also, what's your take on this discussion we just had with about Terra and Luna and the LFG?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Very good to see you guys. As far as Luna goes, I've always questioned the model of Luna and Terra, as well as these algorithmic stablecoins. Anytime that you print more money to support price, it's the same kind of lunacy that the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government have right now with printing more dollars to support inflation or to battle inflation. So anytime the markets are down, that type of model isn't really going to work. Speaking of the Fed, we just got a 50 basis point raise and the Fed fund rate, and the FOMC meeting is coming up again in June. We expect another 50 basis points then, probably another 50 basis points in July, and then a pause after that. This market right now really isn't surprising. All risk assets across the board are going down and will probably continue to go down. Anytime that there's high rates of inflation alongside the Fed rate rising with really no end in sight, you're going to see risk assets really drop.
So where do you see the bottoms? Where do you see? Do you have any intermediate term bottoms here for the likes of Bitcoin and ETH?
Well, I mean, all we can do is try to predict what federal and U.S. policy and global policy is going to be. Like I said, if the Fed continues to raise rates through June and July, we'll probably continue to get markets going down all the way through the summer. My expectation, though, is due to midterm elections coming up in November, we'll probably see the Fed pausing or maybe even lowering rates starting at the September FOMC meeting. So that might be the catalyst. And then, of course, midterm elections are always bring certainty to the markets, and we could see the markets going back up at that point.
I mean, you're saying lowering rates in the midst of a 9% inflation rate or 8 and change inflation rate. You actually think the Fed would lower, or I mean, at the same time, you think they're going to continue to sell bonds to try and raise rates elsewhere and mop up some of the excess dollars that have been floating around thanks to insane government spending and the like?
Yeah, I certainly believe that there will be a pause, but if the economy gets bad enough, I do believe that there is a possibility that that rates could be lowered again starting September, maybe even October.
Wow.
What you just said, though, selling out bonds, that's probably the right move that the Fed should be doing right now. If you look at the yield curve is very important in financial markets and in risk assets. And right now, we're moving towards inversion. The way to avoid inversion is to really stop raising the lower end of the curve, raising rates that causes the lower end of the curve go up, and selling out more bonds at the long end. This would cause the curve, or at least the long end of the curve, to really adhere to market demand and market prices, which would probably cause rates to go up in the long end. So that's the better move right now, but we're just not seeing the Fed doing that.
Wanted to touch upon your big news. So Valkyrie has launched the XBTO Bitcoin Futures Fund, and it's the latest crypto ETF to win approval from the SEC. Also, a while ago, you also launched the Avalanche Trust, and you've already lined up about $25 million there. So taking a look at, first of all, the Bitcoin Futures Fund, I guess, what is any insights into how Bitcoin is doing given the trading of Bitcoin futures, and what's your overall outlook on Bitcoin?
Yeah, Christine. So we haven't launched it yet, and we can't really speculate on or say when we're going to launch it until we actually do. But the important part is that we got approval on this. we had actually confidentially filed a 1933 Act Bitcoin futures ETF about a year ago, and it just got approval now. One of the important pieces in getting approval on a 33 Act structure is that is the structure that a Bitcoin spot ETF would have to be in. Given that Bitcoin is not a security, it can't fit into a 1940 Act fund because 1940 Act funds are RICs, meaning that they have to hold a certain percentage of securities in order to be viable. So the 33 Act approval is really, in my opinion, the next step towards the potential of a Bitcoin spot ETF sometime down the line.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because, as you mentioned, it was the first, and a lot has been made actually about you guys getting that 33 Act fund approved. Do you think, have they given you any indication? Yeah, people keep throwing around the month July as a potential for when they would approve, say, a 33 Act, a spot ETF. Do you think that that's plausible? Has the SEC given you any indication whatsoever that, hey, guys, it wouldn't hurt you to get ready for this?
Yeah, I don't believe July is on the table at all. Really, the commissioners of the SEC have made it very clear, particular Chairman Gensler, that until an exchange or until exchanges that trade Bitcoin are monitored by the SEC, which they are not at the moment, that we will not get a Bitcoin spot ETF. So that's at least a year away. 2023, 2024, maybe. So we're not expecting anything anytime soon. But what we are doing is working towards making baby steps at Valkyrie so that we can get just a little bit closer each time. And we do believe that this 1933 Act approval is one of those baby steps.
Meanwhile, you have this Avalanche trust. So I'm wondering why Avalanche, and what's your outlook on these altcoin prices right now? Absolutely.
Well, we're always looking for great enterprise blockchain solutions outside of Bitcoin as money. We really focus on protocols. What's the next Ethereum? What's the next enterprise solution that's going to have really great things being built on it? And Avalanche is one of those potential protocols that we really like right now. They're doing everything right. We're very supportive of them. We're launching a trust, obviously, into a very bad market, but I believe that building during bad markets is always the best policy, as long as you can. So we're going to continue to build. We're going to continue to launch innovative products into this market, and then when we finally get a turnaround, hopefully we'll be in a very good position.
And just one more question before we leave, but Bitcoin, how low do you see it going? You mentioned Fed rate hikes in the future. How low can it go?
I think Bitcoin could go much lower. My target is probably somewhere around the $25,000 mark is probably the bottom. Even at this level, I'm buying. I never try to pick a bottom, but right now, given how much money has continued to be printed globally, given that we have a $33 billion bill on the table in the US, which means even more government spending, even more inflation, anything that has a limited supply is really interesting right now. So I'm buying here. I'll continue to buy all the way down to 25,000, maybe even lower.